What's one big takeaway piece of wisdom you'd give?
Sell to 25-year-old dudes that like live in their basement. No offense, Sean.
Coolest guy on the podcast.
My phone's just going cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
It isn't going to appeal to everybody, but like you're going to go into pockets.
That's how it is intersected through my life so far.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Before we sell a single thing, I'm going to give you $100,000.
What are the different ways that licensing adds value to your companies?
I just really want your logos on my stuff.
What can you sell? So like we're licensed with the Walt Disney Company. That does not mean that we can make t-shirts.
And I don't even know why we did that deal.
Basically,
I'm fired.
This is a huge mistake.
What is your takeaway lesson?
I want to lean back into licensing.
Cha-ching.
What's up, everybody? You got episode 20 of the Operators Podcast. It's me, Sean. Matt's going to be here. Jason's out, but we have Mike and we have Corbin, the special guest. We're talking everything licensing. This is a play-by-play licensing episode that will totally radically change the way you think about it and make you a millionaire. That is the guarantee from the Simple Modern team. So sit back, enjoy the most rewarding, electric podcasting experience of your life. Episode 20. Let's go, guys.
Cha-ching. You've got some of the very best with you today to talk you through the topic, how it applies to your business, some of the tips and tricks. I'm joined, as always, by Sean. Coolest guy in the pod is Frank from Ridge. Sean, can you give us a little excerpt of your song?
Coolest guy on the podcast. Coolest guy on the podcast.
So Sean's got his own theme song. We're also joined by Matt from Pila Case and also Lomi, but I think Pila Case will be probably the one he's referencing the most talking today. And to my right, your left, we've got Corbin Wallace from the Simple Modern team. Corbin is basically the architect of everything that we do in licensing, and we do quite a bit. So excited to be with all you guys. And we're going to start off pretty basic. Corbin, I'm going to kick it to you. Okay. What is licensing? Just define the terms, give the basic overview of what it is.
Yeah, so pretty much what it is that as a company, you are entering into an agreement with another company that has some sort of intellectual property. Sometimes it's a technology, sometimes it is intellectual property like media assets or a sports logo, and you're entering into an agreement with another organization to use those rights on your product or in your business in some way. And you're generally agreeing to terms for a specific amount of time, distribution channels, and some sort of financial agreement that you will pay the licensor for those rights.
Awesome. So we're talking about things like Walt Disney Company, Mickey Mouse, the NFL, some of the biggest intellectual properties in the world. In fact, it's hard to think of somebody who's got really good intellectual property that doesn't do some licensing, right? I can't think of one really clearly off the top of my head. In fact, even I was listening to the Founders Podcast. They were talking through Ralph Lauren, and that was a big breakthrough for Ralph Lauren when he figured out, hey, licensing is actually a huge play here for my brand. So that's what licensing is. What we want to get into, like, hey, how does it actually intersect with our business? So next question to you, Corbin. How are most licensing deals structured?
Yeah, so pretty much with a licensing deal, kind of generally that you're working with a large organization, we work a lot with media organizations and sports organizations. You're pretty much agreeing with that company on a very specific set of terms. So there's kind of like the term limit, how long you'll sell the product, what specific products you're going to sell, what distribution channels you're going to sell the product in, and then what are the actual products. And so really and truly, it's just like, what can you sell? So we're licensed with the Walt Disney Company. That does not mean that we can make t-shirts for Walt Disney. There are very specific parameters that we can produce product for them.
Okay, so drill into that. We get into an agreement with the Walt Disney Company with Simple Modern. Mm-hmm. What are going to be like the main table stakes of that deal?
Yeah, so pretty much you're going to want to make sure you have your distribution channel and your territories covered in terms of what properties, what channels you want to sell into. So we primarily sell in the United States and North America. So it'll be really broad from a territory perspective. Then additionally, you're going to pick what distribution channels you sell into. We obviously have a strong D2C presence, an e-com presence through Amazon, and then a physical retail presence in brick and mortar. So that'll be really important. And then products, They get very specific in what products that you can produce. Some terms and some contracts we have get as specific as the actual size of the drinkware vessel and the actual vessel itself. So it's a tumbler or a water bottle. They'll get as specific as material usage. And then at the end, they'll get in terms of what properties you can use and then what the royalty rates are and ultimately the minimum guarantee. So because we don't get to use these rights and assets for free, we have to pay a royalty on them. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest parts of the licensing relationship is the royalty rates and the minimum guarantees, because that's where a lot of the deals are ultimately struck.
All right. So before we open this up, a couple of questions. One, why wouldn't they just give you the ability to sell it anywhere? Why do they care?
They want to have some control. I mean, these groups that you're working with have really valuable intellectual property. And so they want to have some control over where the products are sold. And they want to make sure that there's some bar in terms of what the partnership is. Because sometimes they want to give it to a white label brand where there isn't an actual like consumer products brand associated with the product. But that doesn't necessarily elevate the partnership for the NFL, so to speak, or the NBA. They want to know that they're getting into partnerships with companies that can produce royalty dollars and revenue for them. And they want to have a co-branding experience that kind of elevates the partnership. That's one of the things we really work on a lot.
Isn't there some to that though?
Oh,
like,
sure.
don't they also just want to have like a 1,000 license agreements because of the minimums?
No, actually, I don't think they do, Matt. And that's actually one of the reasons I brought it up, because that's what I thought. I thought like, oh, this is just like you want as many people as possible. And what we've kind of learned, I think, is that that's not true, but it's kind of counterintuitive, right? Like you want to maximize revenue, then you want as many license agreements as possible. So why wouldn't they do that, Corbin?
I think it's a pendulum. Like there's just minimum returns. Like at some point there's going to be like they're going to try to get as many partners as they can until they see diminishing returns and frustrated partners, and then they're going to try to consolidate it, and then it's going to kind of pendulum swing. Sure. But ultimately, if you can really maximize your partnerships in a channel specifically, then you can really maximize your MGs and the earned dollars from a licensor perspective. If a licensor is making their money just through the MG, that's a bad thing. Like if you're barely clipping your minimum guarantee and that's how you're growing your licensing revenue from like a media standpoint, like a media entertainment company standpoint, from my perspective, that's a bad thing. You want to incentivize partners to go make money for you and go make great product and then generate as many royalty dollars as possible.
All right. So before we jump into this, I'm just going to kind of clarify a couple of things that got said, just because Corbin threw around a couple of pieces of slang. MRG stands for minimum guarantee, minimum royalty guarantee. When you sign one of these agreements, it's like signing a contract that's like, hey, it doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to pay you this amount of money every year. And so it gives them some certainty of revenue. So Disney, a big part of Disney's revenue comes from, guaranteed revenue that they have in licensing deals. And then you pay a royalty. So you might sign an agreement that says, hey, the minimum guarantee is $100,000. But if you generate $600,000 in royalty, obviously the $100,000 guarantee doesn't matter. You're paying the $600,000. But if something terrible happens and you only sell $50,000 worth of royalties, you're still paying $100,000. And so the point Corbin's just making is like, hey, they're not trying to make their money on the minimum guarantees. They're hopefully getting a lot more than that from each partner. One other point that's really important to make here, the main reason why they don't flood channels with a lot of different people that are licensed is because they actually want to keep prices high, because that's how they maximize their royalties and their revenue. And the more competition there is, the more that can kind of have a deflationary impact on prices. So in general, what we've seen is that these licensors tend to want to pick and say, okay, in Target, in water bottles, we want to have these two partners. But we don't want to have 6 partners, because then they're undercutting each other on price, and then that hurts our ability to get royalties. All right, so with all that said, we'll open it up. We'll come back to some of this stuff. Hey, what are the different ways that licensing adds value to your companies? I want to hear from both Matt and Sean. So Matt, you first. How do you use licensing? I know with Pila, you've used it in quite a few creative ways. Tell us about that.
I use Fulfill's accounting integration to be audit compliant and ready. If you want to sell your business or you want to go public or whatever else, you're going to get audited. And it's not by the IRS. It's by somebody you pay. It's like you're paying for the worst health exam ever. They're going to check every little nook and cranny of your business to make sure you're not stealing money and buying vineyards and airplanes. If you want that to go as easy as possible, it's not going to be easy, but as easy as possible, you should use Fulfill's accounting integration. The founder of Fulfill is hands-on. I mean, this guy's probably worth $40 million and he's texting you. He's trying to jump in. He's trying to get on calls with you. The hands-on approach is good whenever you pay money for a service. And he will make sure that you're integrated correctly with Fulfill's accounting integration. I'm on it. Works great. Tag team to Jason.
We implemented Fulfill as well for inventory management, and we had a big mess on our hands last year. Big mess. And I'm not hearing any nonsense from my team. Like, you know when something is going well, when you're just not hearing about the problems from your team anymore. Like it's not like, oh, everyone's saying anything is great. It's like all of a sudden I don't get a weekly call or text or Slack about a problem because our inventory is dialed and we are sending product to multiple channels, multiple countries. Not as many units as Mike Beckham, but and honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. And there were things that we wanted them to do, and we pushed them hard to do it. And it's like a big back and forth, and then we got there. So like you're right, the team at Fulfill, they're very hands on, and that they care about getting the results that you want, and those are the vendors that you want to speak to.
Well, hang on. I want to hear from Sean first. I think he's got I know he wants to go into this because I don't Rich has got a bunch here.
Well, yeah. I've been wanting to jump in because you guys are PhD levels, okay? And when PhD levels start talking to 101s,
right?
You guys jump a million miles a minute. And we have somebody listening who's a media buyer at an agency, and he's like, "What the is Matt and Corbin talking about?" So let's literally go back to the basics. You hit on it in the first minute, but licensing is when a brand works with another brand on a collaborative product. So the best example is Simple Modern water bottles have Disney characters and they also have sports teams. Now, you threw out another example of brand collaborations that is like Ralph Lauren, or I know the CFO of Panera Bread. You can buy Panera Bread pasta sauce in Ralph's. That's a licensing agreement. Someone who makes pasta put the Panera Bread logo. But think about it as simply as uniting two brands together. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of paperwork that goes into that. And you guys are throwing out channels and minimum guarantees and everything. I think that's super great. At the very basic core, we have a deal with Travis Matthew to have their logos on our wallets. Okay. We give them 10 or 15% of every one of those sales. They can sell those units in their stores. It gets a little bit different because they're not a media property, right? But Disney doesn't have stores. So if you're in Target and you buy a Simple Modern water bottle, Disney's getting a cut, Simple Modern's getting a cut. It's a collaboration between the two. To sign that deal, Corbin and Mike went to Disney and they said, for the right for us to do this, before we sell a single thing, I'm going to give you $100,000. Just like today, here's a wire transfer, and then I'm going to spend a year developing this product. But just so you know, I'm serious, you're getting this $100,000. And then I will only sell these in Target because they don't want 10,000 water bottles at a flea market. They don't want competition on Amazon. They don't want them in your own stores or in environments they don't approve of. They know what Target is. They approve Target. So that's the licensing you are buying, and there's competition for that retail space for media properties.
That's now great. So I want to add two layers that Sean didn't say that are important, because you're right, Sean. Taking it back to basics is the way to go. Important point that has not been said so far. When you get into a licensing agreement, one of the parties is bringing intellectual property, and that can be their logo, that can be their name, that can be their colors, that can be Mickey Mouse. One of the parties is bringing the intellectual property. The other party is saying, I'm going to pay you X amount to be able to put that on my product. Second piece is whoever is saying, hey, I'm going to pay you to put that on my product, almost always they are bearing all of the inventory risk. So if I go to Disney and say, hey, we want to make Mickey Mouse water bottles, take everything Sean said, it's all true. But then on top of that, I'm saying not only am I going to give you that money and this guarantee, but also all the risk is on my plate. I'm the one who's paying for all these water bottles. I'm the one who has to go out and sell them. You just have to kick up your feet on the desk and count the money as it comes in from my sales. So incredibly lucrative if you can develop IP where you can license it out. And there's definitely some risks. I mean, it's easy from the outside to be like, well, licensing is a pretty easy way to make money. You know, people like, you just put logos on your wallet, Sean, and isn't this easy? Isn't it just like printing money? And they don't understand that one of the big drawbacks is that you've got to put a lot of money into that, and you've got to take on all the risk in that agreement.
Right, Mike. And not only the inventory risk, the burden of selling is on you, right?
Absolutely.
You don't if you have a deal with Disney, it doesn't mean you get a deal with Target. You have to also have the deal with Target. You have to have the infrastructure in place with Target or Amazon or your website. So it's like it is really just an additive piece to a machine that's already functioning, and it doesn't give you any other ability besides selling the agreed upon IP. And a quick little tangent. Last episode, Matt brought up Gore, right? And that is an IP company that also licenses their IP. It's not always Mickey Mouse characters and sports teams. There's also
their materials.
Materials, process, whatever else. If I wanted to do a collaboration with Lamborghini, it would just be their carbon fiber that they had pioneered. I would put that on my wallet, and that's the Lamborghini collab. Like, it wouldn't be their colors necessarily. It would be literally the technology I'd be paying for. But all right, that's a great primer. Now we can answer your question, Mike.
No, I'm really glad that you slowed us down, Sean, because like you said, when you live and breathe this, you start talking about it and you use acronyms and different things. And from the outside world, it can feel super confusing. And one of the things that I learned really early on about the licensing world is that it's a small community and it's super insular and it's super confusing from the outside and it's difficult to break into. One of the analogies that I've shared is when you're trying to get into licensing, it's a little bit like you see a castle and you're like, I'd like to get into that castle, but the drawbridge is up. You know, the archers are out. They've got flaming arrows. There's crocodiles, in the moat. And they don't want you in the castle. It feels like everything conspires against getting you getting in the castle. But if you can get into the castle, you're now the king, because you are basically putting food on the table and you're helping generate profits for them where they have zero risk or very little risk. And so it's amazing the whiplash that can happen from being outside and seeing the complexity and the opaqueness to what it's like being on the other side of it. So yeah. Matt, you obviously have some experience here. Let's start with you. Tell us about how licensing has intersected with Pila.
So yeah, we've actually done a lot. Now, okay, so for Pila case, we actually have licensing from both sides. So we license out our material science and our brand, right, to other companies who want to use that to make products, put our name on it. I think we've got about 6 or 7 agreements out there right now. One is in market, more are coming, and they're not just in consumer, right? Like we'll license our materials into like medical applications that just want a different material. So that's one side to licensing for us. The second side to licensing is what you guys are talking about, where we'll go out and license another brand, right? I'll say 2 things that I think are important for people listening. Licensing is a like 301, 401 move. It is not like brand building 101, brand building 201. There's so much other shit that you should get good at before you go and try this. It's an expansion move. So if you don't have 101, 201 stuff done and you haven't done all the basics, like you shouldn't be going and looking like, oh, I'm $5 million brand. I want to do some licensing. Probably the wrong move, because it does add quite a bit of operational complexity to your business. So that's number one. Number 2 is, and we learned this the hard way. So when we license a property for Pila case, we've done it well and we've done it poorly. And usually when we do it poorly, it's because we're licensing a property, like a brand, that is too far away from where our current core customer is. Now, the reason that's a problem for us is like we're a heavy meta ads brand. Like that's where we drive all of our awareness. Mm-hmm. And that pixel is used to seeing like, and Meta is like, here is your customer. This is like the concentric circles that make up like the ideal PLA case customer. Well, like if I go license a property that is way the hell outside of those circles, it just doesn't work. Like Meta's like, dude, you're fucking trying to sell to Ridge Wallet people. Like you sell to 25-year-old girls. Now you're trying to sell to 25-year-old dudes that like live in their basement. No offense, Sean. So like I think whereas like we've done well is like we did a license with Friends, like the TV show. So we did a collection of cases around Friends, like did really well. Like that kind of thinking around like, okay, licensing is a way to expand audience, but you need to take steps, not jumps. Right? That right there is how you start licensing in D2C, in my experience.
So
Yeah,
to build on
Mike
that before I kick to you, Sean, one thing that's worth saying is that licensing, the number of people you're going to appeal to with any given license, you're shrinking your total addressable market, right? So like, I don't know what percentage of the population is interested in buying a Friends phone case. That's a pretty pop culture thing, but still 80% or 90% of your customers have no interest. So you're going more contextualized, but hopefully how attractive it is to people goes up, and that trade-off. But that's
you're
where
exploring the fringes, right?
Yes.
Like you're exploring the edges of your current audience. And I know, Sean, like I've seen you guys do this with some of the deals that you're doing with Ridge. Like it isn't going to appeal to everybody, but like you're going to go into pockets, particularly in D2C, that would otherwise you probably wouldn't get reach into. So like the Friends thing for us was we just had a strong inclination that like we should tap into nostalgia and like let's go after brands that have like real nostalgic value. And that was like a year or two ago. And Friends was just ripping during the pandemic. Like people were going back and watching back. Like that's an old ass show, man. Like Sean, you were probably like 3 when Friends was out. Like it's just, it did really well for our audience. But like I've done licenses with like fucking Batman that did not do well. And I don't even know why we did that deal, right? It was probably because we had a blanket deal with Warner, I think. And we were just like throwing shit against the wall, right?
Yeah.
But like
Batman doesn't work. Harry Potter might. All right, Sean, I want to hear from you. How does it intersect your business?
Right. Matt said steps, and I think, Mike, you have the best story about steps. You started with a local license, which is you can only sell stuff in Oklahoma to your
one school.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And you went step by step by step to being this licensing powerhouse. And Matt said it's a 301 or 401 move. It's a more advanced move. But like in your instance, you took the fast track to licensing by learning very early on with a very low risk license. That's what I'm going to say a local license to the University of Oklahoma is, right? You didn't jump right in and get the NFL because you would have fucked that up. Anybody would have fucked that up.
Oh.
And we would not have gotten it. We would have never been able to get it also because remember, you've got to convince these guys that you're credible. Just saying like, hey, I like the NFL and I think people would like NFL water bottles is not going to be a compelling vision. You've got to be able to convince them. Especially this decade, maybe 25 years ago, maybe 35 years ago, it would have worked.
And that's a huge issue in the licensing world because there are there are some companies out there that have like no brand necessarily, where they're not adding value in the partnership from a brand perspective. And they've got rights to so many knickknacks out there and so many tchotchke-like products, and they just own parts of the market, and they just had distribution to a variety of products, and drinkware might have just been one of them. And now we have to go compete as a brand to try to go get that
because they're kind of grandfathered
because they're grandfathered in over maybe a 25-year deal.
I think there's also like, and I think it's funny, you know, Mike, watching you guys in your licensing journey from outside. You've done the colleges, the sports teams, the Disneys, right? But then like last week or week before, whatever, you dropped in our chat like the Dude Perfect thing. Mm-hmm. You know, and what that got me thinking, and I think Sean, you're really good at this, like Ridge is, you got to look at your product category and your brand and who your customer is. And then you got to think like, who are the non-obvious media properties or brands that we should do a license type arrangement with? And it's probably not freaking Mickey Mouse, right? Like it's not an obvious like Disney property. It's going to be something else. That's like, because that's how the internet is arranged now, right? It's like it's arranged in smaller pockets. Those small pockets are still huge reach, and they can do really wonderful things for a consumer brand. But I would really encourage people to step outside of the obvious ones. Another lesson for people on licensing that I got from my business partner, because Brad, who his last company was toys, like big scale, like 9-figure manufacturing of toys, which is like toys is all licensing, right? Like go through a Walmart or a Target in November or December, and it's like everything has a logo on it, everything, right? One thing I learned from him was you want evergreen properties. So like Barbie just came out, right? Big splash, $100 million into the movie. If you had a Barbie product licensed while that thing was happening, you did well. That is not going to guarantee that that's an evergreen performing property, because like that was a moment in time that property was hot. So a lot of movies and a lot of these characters are usually make bad license agreements. Like you shouldn't go there.
And they always a lot of the partners that you're going to work with are going to push it.
They want you to take those.
We're like, this is the next X. This is the next Y. You need to be in this position.
For every Barbie, there's 10 that it's like, oh, there's a movie coming out. This is going to crush it.
Right.
And in, whatever, the Dominican Republic or something, there's 8 billion, water bottles with, Raya and the Dragon Slayer on it because somebody was like, this is going to be big and Disney's pushing it.
Yeah. I look at it like if someone is willing to wear a t-shirt or socks with that brand on it, like that's worthwhile to look at from a license, right? Like that's why sports teams are good, because people, especially Americans, are freaking nuts when it comes to like college sports and shit like that. Like you guys are just insane on a whole other level. So like those kinds of properties to me are like evergreen properties. You can go do pretty good business and pretty good audience expansion using those. They're harder to get because they are evergreen.
And they run from a centralized location. So you can't just go get a Dallas Cowboys license. You have to go get the NFL license. You can't just go get the LA Lakers license. You have to go get the NBA license.
But I kind of wonder, like, Sean, like, have you guys played with like any of the video games, like any of those communities? Like I don't know why, just that for some reason I think Ridge, and I'm like, young dude. I always think Marty in our group. How many Ridge wallets does Marty have?
Yeah, dude.
Like you should make a
10%
Fortnite
of the circulation. I think Marty has amassed.
Yeah. And shout out Marty. He's a world-class Valorant player. So,
make him a case with that damn thing on it and make him a wallet with it. I guarantee you he'll buy it.
Yeah. So, the original question Mike asked is, how does licensing intersect our business? And what I'll say is both of you guys are the two most instrumental people in pushing licensing onto Ridge. First, Matt gave us the intro to the agency we use, Perpetual Licensing. So shout out them if they want business or whatever. Like any licensing we got has gone through them. You have to pay them a percentage, so it makes licensing more expensive, but it's the only way you're going to get licenses. And then Mike and Corbin have been instrumental in teaching our team all of the terminology and hand-holding through this process. So I would put our licensing into, we're still in our infancy. I think we've done 3 different types of licensing. The first one is people I know. So we've done a Travis Matthew wallet because I know that team. We've done a Hennessy wallet because I know that team. We might do a Cuts wallet because we're friends with Steven. Like people I know, very easy to get licensing deals done, right? Realtree. And then the second category is influencer wallets. So we have a big influencer program. Occasionally we'll do wallet releases with them. And that has sold thousands and thousands of units, right? So we did a wallet with 1000. He's an artist. He designs them. We release them. That is a licensing agreement. It's his art. It's his IP. He promotes it. I think we gave him 20% of royalties, maybe something more. And he sold thousands of units. So the guy pocketed a lot of money off the deal. There's a charity component, whatever. The third one is the real licensing that you guys are talking about. Smokey Bear was like the first one we did. So, going through an application process, like going through design samples, whatever. We have some other big ones coming up. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about them until they're officially released, but Matt brought up video games. Yeah, next year or the year after, we're going to do a ton of video games. Really close with Microsoft, and they're pushing Minecraft 30 anniversary like nobody's fucking business. They're like you guys said, they're like, this is our big moment. Like it's going to be bigger than Barbie. Like they're pushing the hell out of that. So that's how it is intersected through my life so far.
A few things that I love about SendLane. First, it's a premium product at affordable prices. Like that's how we built the Simple Modern brand was, hey, we're going to make something that's as good as anything out there, but we're going to make the pricing affordable. It's definitely true about SendLane. Run by an operator that's got 14 years of email experience. He ran a D2C company. So he really understands that their team really understands what their customers need and want. They built a product based on their experiences. And I think it's been mentioned on this show before, but like they do a great job of engaging with the community via the social platforms, Twitter, I guess Threads now, whatever. They really are talking to people and asking them what they want. Recently, they rolled out reviews as a free add-on to what they were offering already. And then, Klaviyo really quickly, like a week later, 2 weeks later, rolled it out, but it costs money with Klaviyo. But it's a good example of, I think they're really listening to their customer. I think that when you're buying any software solution, because, even though you can switching costs are real, like you got to train people on a new platform. And it's a hassle always to switch. So I really try and pay attention to what is not just where is the product right now, but what's the trajectory of the product. I'm really impressed with the trajectory of their product. They've gone from not on my radar to being very impressed with what they're building over the last 6 months, just because of the trajectory and the rate of development. And so it's not just like, hey, where's the software that you're committing to? Where's it today? It's where's it going to be 6 months, a year from now? Finally, I've done email. I've invested in email providers. And I would say the number one danger in email is if you get poor deliverability. All this segmenting, all these hacks, tricks and tips, none of that matters if you don't have good deliverability. And if you're trying to pick an email provider, you need somebody who really gets deliverability and knows how to troubleshoot deliverability issues. And they're really strong. Their in-house team that can diagnose and help with deliverability issues is really strong. And they share some of that content even publicly, which is really helpful. So big fan of SendLane, big fan of people building exceptional products. All right, so let's keep riffing on what you're talking about, Sean. One of the questions I had in mind is, how do you convince, one of these companies to work with you, somebody to grant you the ability to license their IP? And you referenced it earlier. I don't know if I've ever told the story on the pod, but I'm going to tell it. And then I want to hear, Matt and Corbin, I want to hear your thoughts about like, how do you get somebody to work with you? But so I had this vision. We could do really premium, collegiate, insulated drinkware, but I didn't know anything about anything. And so I literally just got on Google and started trying to figure it out. And what I found out is more or less like if it was going to work, if I was going to be able to get all the universities, it would start with getting one university. And I went to the University of Oklahoma. I teach at the University of Oklahoma as an adjunct. And I'd had some success in the business world. And so I thought, this will be easy. And I thought wrong. Basically, like I put in an application. I'm like, surely they'll call me back. Nothing. I don't hear anything for a month, for 2 months. I start kind of semi-stalking the office, just trying to like bump into somebody where I can kind of get an appointment set up. I finally get an appointment set up. And at the point that I got the appointment, we had probably sold in our lifetime to date, I'm going to say less than 2,000 water bottles. Like that's how early on we were. And so, which is like, Matt, like this is breaking every rule that Matt just said, every best practice.
Don't do it,
Now telling you a story. Don't do anything I'm about to say. But I'm like, how do I make it seem like we're a big deal when we are clearly not a big deal? And I'm like, okay, I've got it. So you're all familiar with Shopify, the app, and the best push notification sound in the history of push notification sounds, the cha-ching. So I have this meeting at like say 3:00 or whatever, the cha-ching. I go in, I just ramp meta spend. And I'm just sending all this traffic to the website, and which our website was doing like, a couple $100s a day in sales, like nothing. But I'm like, I don't care how much money I set on fire. I walk into the meeting with my phone turned on full blast on volume. And so as this meeting, I shake her hand, I sit down, and as this meeting's going on, my phone's just going cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. I let that happen probably 15 times before I'm really sorry. I pull it out, I turn it off. I'm like, those are just sales from our website. I'm really sorry about that distraction. And then I carried on the meeting. But it was literally like, I'm looking for any kind of way that I can frame it as we're a brand that's really going somewhere and doing something. I have no idea if that's why she chose to give us the OU license, but she did. And that ended up parlaying into everything we've done since then. But
I've done that too, Mike.
Have you?
Well, I did it with Meta Spend. Like we would, when we were trying to secure licensing agreements, I would absolutely hammer the headquarters of Warner or Disney with ads. So
geo-target?
if geo-target their headquarters, I'd be and I wouldn't even do conversion focused ads. I would just do reach and frequency. It's if you lived in that city, I carpet bombed you for a week. And it's man, Pila cases everywhere. Because these people, they don't understand that you can do that, right? They just think shit, it's on my Instagram feed, it's in YouTube, it's everywhere. So I think there's if you believe strongly in a license and you think the walled garden is going to be very difficult to jump over or get into the castle, there are ways to make yourself look really attractive to these other properties. You just got to be creative, right? I actually have friends. I got one buddy who I won't say the brand, Sean, you and I, you know who they are too. But they would send out really elaborate gifts to the people at the property that they wanted to license with as their look how awesome we are and get in the door. And that worked very well. They've got some major influencers, some awesome artist collaborations, all because they took the time to build something really special for those people. So there are ways to punch through the walled garden or jump over the fence kind of thing.
I think the real takeaway from that is, listen, for all of business is it is a human business.
Yes.
It is person to person. It's one man defense, right? There is one decision maker at any company to make any decision. Acquisitions happen like this. M&A happens because the CEO is oh, I want to buy that. I like it. And then the rest of the organization gets behind it. Or licensing the same way. It's oh yeah, I like your product. My son has it. Bam, you're in, right? It is one-to-one, person to person. And Mike, yeah, maybe your sales tactics worked. That she was charmed by the cha-ching, or it was just your smile or your demeanor, or she had a good day, right? A very funny. I mean, it's funny or it's shocking that if you are getting sentenced to a crime, if it happens before lunch versus after lunch, it's a 15 or 25% difference. If the judge happens to be full and happy after lunch, you get a reduced sentence. And it's yeah, we're all people. And so just getting a one champion in an organization can change everything.
Yeah. Can I give you guys there's a drawback to licensing that I think is really important, and it's caused us a ton of pain. Okay, if you're listening to this or watching this and you're going to explore licensing, the paperwork is insane. It's insane. Not getting the deal done.
Yeah.
Okay, getting the deal done, that paperwork's fine. The fucking reporting after you have it. If you do a deal with Disney, have fun afterwards. It's a proctology exam. And Corbin, I'm sure you've got some gray hair from the amount of shit that you got to send them on a regular basis. So the operational complexity of licensing has little to do with getting the products designed and launched. And it's everything afterwards that becomes
when we want to bring a new color to market, Simple Modern wants to bring a new ornamentation to market. We work with our creative team. We make some great products, some great designs. We work with our factory partners. We bring it to market. We sell it. We see how it does. We decide if we want to put more capital there or not, or do something else. When we do something with any of our licenses, it's a digital asset creation, a photo, a digital photo saying this is what it will look like. Then we get a pre-production sample from our factory on the other side of the world. It gets approved. Then we do a production sample with a package that also had to be approved.
Yeah.
All before
And
we sell it.
guys, Corbin, Mike, you don't even run a lot of Facebook ads. Okay.
Yeah.
We do a license deal and I'm like, think of so like Sean, how many freaking creative iterations does one ad go through as you try to get as much out of an ad concept as possible? All right. You can do that internally. Like Ridge can make as many ad creatives as it wants. Now you involve Disney or the NFL. No, you can't.
Everyone has
You
to be
can't just
approved.
spin up new NFL ad creative on Tuesday, fire it into Meta. It's like that shit's got to go for approval. And if they
Let me
catch
take it a
you
step
running
further.
it, you're
Something I
done.
saw this week. Some of our Disney stuff, they want a very particular stamp in the bottom of a plastic bottle that no one's going to ever see, but it
Right.
needs to have this little stamp. So when we're producing it at our domestic production facility, we have to change out the mold for the bottom of that bottle. We had to literally set like 2,000 bottles on fire and just trash them because somebody forgot we were doing Disney that run and they didn't change out the little stamp on the bottom of the bottle.
This is the thing with like, so licensing is an old world business. And if you're a D2C brand, you're a new world business. Like you have digital everything, right? Like you're fast. Licensing especially with traditional players, nothing about it is fast. It's like taking the worst of retail and sticking it into your digital business. And now you have to deal with the worst of retail, which is slow turnarounds, long cycles, shitloads of bureaucracy and approvals. Like it's not going to make your D2C business more fun. Let me tell you that.
So I want to take us to actually a place where this is the huge alpha ad of the episode. I think the number one way that licensing can go badly for you is inventory. I'm going to repeat it. Hear me in the back. The number one way that licensing can go bad for you is inventory, and I'm going to very quickly explain why that is. And the reason I want to talk about it is that you actually have some of the very best people in the world in terms of understanding how to mitigate inventory risk. And I know all of us are employing some of these strategies. So here's what I mean when I say inventory is the number one risk. Number one, if you have traditional financing, some kind of an asset-backed lending with a bank, they will not lend against licensed inventory. And the reason they will not lend against it is because if you were to go under and they took possession, they don't have the license to sell it, and that inventory is worthless for them. So you might get 60 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar on your regular inventory. You will not get any often on licensed inventory. So that inventory, that asset is kind of has problems from the very beginning. Second, we talked about this earlier. Licensing is super contextualized, right? People love the NFL. The NFL could have its best year ever next year, and the Cincinnati Bengals could win the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter if Sean has 10 billion Buffalo Bills wallets. If he has not very many Cincinnati and a bunch of Buffalo Bills, it could matter zero that he has a ton of NFL inventory because he doesn't have it in the right particular property. And if you want Cincinnati Bengals wallets, you don't want Buffalo Bill wallets, no matter what the price. And this is the both the strength and the weakness that like people with licensed products, they want a very specific thing. And so when you have it, it's great. You can charge premium prices. It will drive in new customers. When you have something that's a little bit different than what they want, often there's not even a price you can convince them to buy it from you for. And so where you can really get upside down here is with inventory. We had a launch. I won't say the name of what it was. We had a launch last year where they convinced us to go into a lot of their longer tail properties. And it was a disaster. And we're going to have some of that inventory until I'm well into my late 40s at this rate. And so I got some gray hair looking at the, when you're not talking about months of cover or weeks of cover and you're talking about years of cover, that sounds like a licensing inventory problem. So what I want to hear from, Matt, Sean, both you guys are doing some things with on-demand to help mitigate that risk. Matt, can you tell us about how you're harnessing on-demand and licensing?
Dude, I think this is such an interesting point and a good one. We don't even have inventory, and I still cautiously approach licensing. Like I literally make phone cases on demand. I don't, like, people think like, oh, it's print on demand. I'm like, no, I manufacture the damn things on demand. Like we injection mold. I have big ass car sized injection molding machines in a building here in BC. That's where we make our product. And then we print it or engrave it. And I still tread carefully with licensing agreements just because operationally we got a lot of PTSD around this stuff. You know, like it doesn't just like, oh, you just turn it on. The biggest thing that I actually like, if I didn't have on demand, I don't even know if I would do it. Like just because like phone models and sizes and like just the inventory in phone cases sucks. So like I think the inventory call out is really important. Like if you're in apparel or accessories where there's lots of sizes and colors, like you got to really watch your inventory. Sean, are you guys doing on demand now? Like on your printing and stuff?
Yeah. So we have a partner in Chicago, JTB Customs.
Yeah, we use them too.
Yeah. You can put, your name or whatever else. And so for influencer launches, it goes through there. So like 1000 when his art, it was all printed through there. We're also working with our boy Todd, the mystery man, the guy who won't come on the pod, who's invited every single time. He runs a big personalization business, and we are working with him right now on samples just to do things that are a little harder than JTB might want to do, right?
Yeah.
Like full front back plate, then like assembled at our US facility, like working on that stuff. But Matt, I think licensing for you is a double-edged sword that you solve through on demand. Because the thing about phone cases, we used to have a phone case business. We got rid of it because it is time sensitive inventory. It is expirational inventory. You sell 14 phone cases for 3 years and then you sell 0. Like if you're selling iPhone, there's no market for iPhone 10 phone cases right now.
That's actually not true. I'll show you my sales one day. Like I sell a weird amount of iPhone 7 cases and a weird amount of iPhone 8 cases. And it's like, it's long tail and it only works because I can make on demand. But all of my competition doesn't do that because they don't have the infrastructure, right? We just spent like years and millions building it. So yeah, you're right. Like it's funny, like going into this conversation today, I was like telling my chief of staff, my president of Pila Case, and I'm like, I want to lean back into licensing. Cause like, I got a funny feeling I'm going to come out of this freaking pod all fired up on licensing. And I'm like, Julia, I'm telling you, get ahead of this. Cause like, I'm going to come out guns blazing. And like, it makes sense.
I'm just looking at like all the early decisions we made using Northbeam to get to where we are today, when we were like 30 million and 50 million in sales. And that's, that's sort of where we started using it heavily, and it really helped us. And I'm just thinking back to some early advice that I received from other people, not Northbeam, when our Facebook ROAS was like sub 1. And they're like, you're losing money. You cannot spend this money. And every time I think about this, I'm like, actually, if we had listened to those people, we would have destroyed the business. And and Danny and I didn't know that much back in 2020. I think we've learned a lot since then. And, without Northbeam and looking at that complete picture of everything, we really would have destroyed our business by listening to the wrong people and not at least having one source of truth in Northbeam.
Right. And you have the superpower of on demand, but like, I don't feel bad for Mike if he has some movie that didn't do well and he's going to sell 1 unit a month for the next 5 years or whatever, because the water bottles don't go bad. When that customer's ready to buy, they're going to come back and buy because they don't go bad. The phones, like you can do them on demand. If I have an iPhone 8, it is worth $0 to me because especially if I pay a minimum guarantee or have to pay a royalty on it, like it is just, I'm better off destroying it and moving on.
Yeah. So we did, when we do our licensing deals, I think Corbin, you touched on this at the beginning, like there's a lot of parameters when you structure these things, right? Like markets, type of product, all that stuff. Because our material is proprietary to us. Like, so we actually go and we do the deal around the Pila case material with phone cases. We don't do it by phone model. Like we don't even do it by market. We usually just say like, look, nobody else has this stuff. It's our material. It's proprietary. It's our manufacturing. There's not a warehouse that like some dude can call and say like, hey, can you make me Pila cases? Like it doesn't happen. So when we do these deals, we go in with such a unique product side that it simplifies the agreement and it takes some variables out. Otherwise, like, oh yeah, God, if I had to do a licensing deal and say like the iPhone 15 is coming, let's do Barbie for the iPhone 15. Shoot me in the face. Like that's just no way. But yeah, I do think, Sean, you're right. Like depending on the category, depending on like all these variables we're talking about, licensing could actually be a real unlock for the right business.
And if you approach it correctly, like if you focus on evergreen, right? Because like I don't have to get good at ordering if I work with a sports team or if I work with Smokey Bear. It's because I mean, maybe we under ordered. Every licensing thing we've done has sold out completely, right? But like we also control distribution through D2C. And like if we have 80% sell through, that's great. I'm like, yeah, cool. Like, we'll get rid of it and we can bring it back later. But if you really are looking for if you did a Super Bowl wallet, right? Like it is a timed event. Next year, nobody wants the Super Bowl from last year. It's like you have to get that perfectly right, and on demand is the only thing that makes sense there. I'm sure there's other examples of it. It is just it's added complexity. Like I said very early in the podcast, it's an add-on to your business. It is not. It shouldn't be your entire business. It's not going to save your business. And I talk to licensing agencies or IP, whoever, and they make it very clear they do not want to save your business. Like they only want to join winning teams. Like they only want to bolt on to the best businesses. And that's why they're getting a lot stricter on who they sign. It used to be that like any Joe Schmo could sell t-shirts in Target or whatever, but now they're trying to control that. I think Fanatics, or what is it?
Fanatics.
Fanatics. Yeah. Fanatics has really changed the market there. That like they are setting the pace that the licensing industry is moving at. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, they've disrupted it a ton, and they actually create a lot of exclusivity where you can't sell on other digital commerce channels if you want to sell on Fanatics. And so for some people, it actually creates opportunity depending on how you want to run your business. So there are some added pluses there.
All right. So one other point that's worth making here, going back to what we talked about last episode, huge advantage of licensing is that there is a moat, there is a competitive advantage. For example, like we have the ability to sell water bottles that have Disney on them in Target, and only one other company has that right. And so we're not competing against the entire world of anybody who can come up with a Mickey Mouse water bottle. We're competing against one other company or two other companies in that situation. So there's some real strengths, some real drawbacks. We've touched on a bunch of stuff. Hey, Sean, let's start with you. What's one big takeaway piece of wisdom you'd give based on what you've learned about licensing over the last year or two?
Yeah. My motivation for getting into licensing is that it legitimizes a business. You are paying for association. That's what the royalty fee is. And I walk into licensing agreements being the one willing to lose. I think it's the best type of relationships are win-win, but most relationships are win-lose. And I walk in there to a sports team or to a media property or whatever, being like, I don't even care about making money on this. I just really want your logos on my stuff. And I have the P&L to back that up. So I'm at a different stage of my business where I am paying for association, right? Just like we go above and beyond to make sure Nordstrom's is happy because we're the best selling wallet in Nordstrom's, and that just legitimizes the business. I think post-COVID, more D2C brands are legitimate, but pre-COVID, like you could have just been any other asshole selling anything on the internet, right? So going back to the basics, this will not save your business. It adds complexity. You guys talked about the approval process for designs. Every quarter, you have to send them all of your sales. You have to give them your QuickBooks. You have to work with them because Disney has rigorous standards it holds every single licensee to. There is somebody on the other side going through line by line, making sure that they get their money, and not a penny more or a penny less. And that is just a pain in the ass you have to deal with. It is an audit every single quarter. So only do it if you're ready, if you're ready to make the investment, and start really small. There's a couple, easy to get properties or find a brand to partner with. Like let's start easy, make sure it works for you, and then learn it. And then you can graduate to the big guys, right? You can be a Mike Beckham, you could be a Corbin.
Yeah, there's two things that Sean hit there. Like one, licensing is like a great way to do transfer of trust. Like any kind of influencer creator partnership, it's all you're trying to do is just transfer of trust. I think that's a great one. What I think Sean is hitting on with start small, what I would advise everyone to do if you're going to dip your toe in licensing is go and try to do deals with none of the big mature licensing houses. Find properties or brands that are like, they're new to it too. And the reason I say that is like, that's going to reduce the operational complexity, not just in reporting, but like if you're a D2C business, you're ad heavy. Like, man, how many times do we talk about meta ads on this damn pod? Like meta ads runs D2C. Let's just be honest. So like if you're an ads heavy brand, you should be doing licensing deals with people who are going to not step on your shit every time you want to fire up a new ad. Like,
yeah, I think two really great early licenses. I mean, Smokey Bear has been really good.
Yeah.
Real Tree has been really good. Product Red has been really good. Like
Product Red's a great one. Something I don't want to say it. I don't want to give it away because I know there could be people listening. I can tell you guys what we're doing after.
Okay. But what I'll say about Product Red is it is the most expensive license because they don't look at royalty. They look at, no, we want a donation of 6 figures, but they are great to work with. That's what I'll say about Product Red. They make your life really smooth, right? But you got to pay the piper. Matt, what is your takeaway lesson?
Oh man, hire Corbin. Well, I'm not kidding. Look, if you're going to do licensing, like
find your own.
Yeah, I'm not going to hire Corbin. I'm saying hire a Corbin. Look, I think I really mean it because it is or you work with a perpetual or one of these agents, but like this is not a core competency for most companies, most brands. I would really look to just like minimize the brain damage of licensing. Like we're talking about it on the show, but like truthfully, I don't know shit about it relative to like somebody who lives and breathes this every day. So I would advise go and get a Corbin, like somebody who owns this, who can just like shepherd you through it.
Yep. Corbin, what about you?
I think the thing that I would add to this, because I think both Sean and Matt made some really good points on like what the takeaways are. This is a long-term play is the way we view it. Is that like, if you think you're going to get into a deal for 1 to 2 years and make some money and then leave that deal, you are going to be very sad. Like, I think you're going to wind up frustrated and you're not going to want to do more of the deals in the future. Like, you have to think about this from a very long-term perspective. One of the examples we have on this is that our first deal with a professional sports league, we lost money in year 1, but it legitimized our business and who we were partnering with. So it wasn't just that we had collegiate partners, but we had collegiate partners and professional sports partners. We ultimately got other sports licenses and Disney, Paramount, and a variety of other media licenses because we did that first professional sports deal. So even though we lost money the very first year, if you have the mindset, if you want to be in licensing, that it's a long-term play. That may not be the right answer for everyone. Your business may not be able to hold up to that. But if you think you can be in licensing and you think you can add value in the space, then it is a long-term play. But if you think you're going to get in and out of there in 1 or 2 years and make money, I think you're going to be frustrated.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And as always, if you listen to this episode, you're entitled to 1 free Ridge wallet. Just send Sean a personal email to claim yours. We love having you with us. We'll see you next time.
All right, everybody. My email is
Cha-ching.